allowed to do that.
All right, good evening, everybody. What's that? It could be a minute, 30 seconds, it could be a minute. Who knows?
Poor guy.
All right.
Okay, what are we doing?
We're going to begin. I ask that you put your cell phones on silent or turn them off, and council members, just ensure your microphones are turned on. Today is March 10th, Monday. It is a regular legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. Before we begin our regular legislative meeting, we do have individual committee meetings this evening, but before we begin our committee meetings this evening, we do have a special guest. We see her in the room that we're going to present a resolution. We'll get her out of here, or she can stick with us for old time's sake.
Yeah, it's great.
But we're going to be presenting a resolution to Paula. No. So, do you have the wording?
Resolution number 107-2024, title, Commendation, Paula Callio. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton to honor and give public recognition to Paula Callio for her contributions to the citizens of the City of Barberton. Whereas Paula Callio grew up in Barberton with her parents Evelyn and Paul Mills, who owned the Mills Funeral Home, Paula's father served as chairman of the Salvation Army. Paula has participated in the kettle ringing from a very young age. Paula remembers her father as someone who taught her to be involved in her community as she continues her father's efforts today. And whereas Paula married Raymond Callio and lived in Florida for many years, traveling back and forth from Barberton to Newport Richey each year, Paula has 2 children, Dawn and Maria, 7 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. And whereas Paula's career as a business person included opening a publishing company and working alongside a stockbroker's continuing education company. Under Paula's management, the company hired 24 industry teachers. And whereas Paula relocated to Barberton 7 years ago, and during this transition, she decided to become fully involved in charitable work with the Salvation Army and other organizations. Paula brings a unique touch to her work in Barberton, investing in positive changes for Barberton. Whereas Paula has committed herself to the City of Barberton by serving on several boards in the community, including Lake Ann YMCA, South Summit Chamber, the Summit County Committee Health Committee, and the City of Barberton Board of Zoning Appeals, and most notably serving as chairman of the board of the Barberton Salvation Army. And whereas in Paula's time spent at the Salvation Army, Paula is a founding member of Magic's Ready to Learn, a committee that raises money to provide school supplies for all Barberton students entering kindergarten through the 5th grade, the annual Labor Day celebration, and the annual Red Kettle campaign. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Barberton, State of Ohio. Section 1, that the Council of the City of Barberton hereby honors and gives public recognition to Paula Callio for her contributions to the citizens of the City of Barberton. Section 2, that it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were meetings open to the public and in compliance with the law. Section 3, that this resolution shall be in force and effect from and after the earliest period allowed by law. Passed unanimously on November 12, 2024.
Speech.
Wants to come up and congratulate you too.
Okay. I just want to say thank you. I can't get in front of a group and not talk, I'm sorry. I want to say thank you for this. I now know why I'm tired. After what you just read off. I can't believe I did all that, but I did it out of love for my city. And I grew up here, and I have nothing but fond memories of being a resident of Barberton. So thank you all so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Friends and family and
Congratulations.
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you. You did. Thank you so much. I love you.
Your face.
You're welcome. No problem. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
I can go home and watch this on my computer.
Yeah. Thank you again, Paula. When I started doing this about 6.5 years now, maybe 7, that was my point of contact for getting involved. So you've been around literally every year for everything. So thank you again for everything. Is there anybody else that would like to say anything? Of course, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you. Paula, I've obviously known you for a couple years now, and it's been an honor working with you on the school supply committee. And I know that there's been a lot going on lately, but I'm really excited to, keep that train going. So I'm so thankful to have met you and to have been inspired by you to give back to the community, and I just love you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Paula, I see Joyce back there too. I'll never forget years ago, you came into the restaurant, you asked me for help for the Salvation Army for Thanksgiving. And then you told me it was a Monday, and I said, well, what do you ask me for? Just tell me what you need. And it's become my favorite day of the year for, well, we've been 5 years when we started that, 5 or 6 years. You've been there a couple times to help me. But it is literally my favorite day, and it was all because of you and Joyce there. So thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anything? Mayor? I'll put you on the spot.
I was going to make some comments at the end, I still will. If you're here or watching here at the moment, I just want to thank you for all your, not only involvement, but the changes that you've been a part of here in the community. 7 years may seem like a short period of time, but you've been in so many different kind of organizations and facets throughout the community that are all, interrelated here in Barberton, right? But you've made a great impact on all those organizations in the community at large. So I appreciate all of our talks and conversations and everything you've done here in the community. So
Thank you so
very well
much.
deserved.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hager.
Well, Paula, I met you at the Merton quintuplet baby shower, and I have to say your love for the city and your love for volunteering is infectious. I don't think I would be sitting right now if it weren't for having met you. Everything you've done for this city and everything you continue to do by the impact you've had on people in this city is absolutely amazing. You are truly, truly a blessing and a gem to this city, and we thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Paula, Joyce, you guys are welcome to hang out for one for the road, I guess, maybe? I don't know. For old time's sake. But we're going to jump into our meeting.
Don't blame you.
All right. All right, so we're going to jump into our committee meetings this evening, and first up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Easterling.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is March 10th, 2025 at 6:10 PM here in council chambers. All my members are present, and other council members and visitors as noted on my sheet. Topic of discussion, we have one request for legislation. It's a letter from Don Patterson, Director of Barberton Parks and Recreation, requesting legislation to appropriate $15,000 from the unappropriated Parks Revolving Fund to the capital budget of the Parks Revolving Fund. One reading and emergency wording is requested. And it's going to be referred to finance. The letter accompanied this was from Mr. Patterson. And it's, the money was a grant that was given to him, and it's going to be used for fencing and a new restroom at the College Park project. Can I get, do we have any remarks? Is Mr. Patterson here?
No.
Okay. Does council have any remarks? The body? Anyone? Any guests? Can I get a motion to call this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Can I get motion to vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved, so we'll call it out. And then I have no pending legislation at this time. So with that, I'd like to call to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. And at 6:12, we adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Easterling. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll call Public Welfare and Safety Committee to order. Today is March 10th, 2025. Time is 18:12 hours. We're in council chambers. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair, Mr. Easterling, co-chair, Ms. Gerhart, Mr. Greer. All their council members are present. Also, guest and administration's noted on my sheet. Where'd Miss Heisman go? Okay. You guys see the request for legislation. I'll be holding that for the time being. And then we have one pending legislation, which is ordinance number 31-2025, presented by myself and Ms. Thompson. Enter into contract public consulting group, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a 3-year contract with public consulting group to pay 10% of approximately $136,148 to be collected annually and declaring an emergency. We'll be voting on that tonight. And I have nothing pending other than that. Is there any questions? Comments?
Director, just walk back in.
Is there anything on the OPBA stuff?
We have not received that report yet.
Okay. We'll hold it till, for 2 weeks or whatever. Go from there. Any other comments? Questions? Gallery? Anybody? Chief Iona, you're short, I see.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
We are adjourned at 18:14 hours.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. All right. Next up is Rules Marketing Development. Ms. Gerhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is Monday, March 10th, 2025. The time is 6:14 PM. We are in council chambers. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair. Mrs. Beck as co-chair, Mr. Heidick, and President Greer. All other council members are noted, as well as everyone else on my sheet. I have a request for legislation, a letter from Mr. Heidick, Councilman at Large, requesting legislation to amend Ordinance 144-2009, posting places. If everybody saw the attachment earlier, the request is to strike through posting places, Leeches, Giant Eagle, and the North End Fire Station, and add in bold the Barberton YMCA, the Active Adult Center, and online with the website. Does anybody have any questions about this? Any concerns about this? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a letter from Jamie Eisman requesting legislation to amend the days of DORA. Ordinance 98-2022, emergency wording is requested. I believe everybody also received that. And we have a very special guest this evening, Melanie with Main Street's Back, to present this DORA change. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Good evening. So I wanted to update you on the DORA. So currently, Main Street Barberton oversees the implementation of DORA. So what that entails is the city obviously enforces it, but Main Street Barberton oversees the education to the businesses on DORA, and then also the implementation of the cups that are used for the downtown. So as was stated, the designated outdoor refreshment area was approved by City Council back in August of 2022. Since that inception, we had 9 liquor establishments. We've actually added 2 more recently in the past couple of months. You can go ahead and, thank you. The DORA signs, stickers, and flyers and posters identifying the boundaries were created by Main Street Barberton. Both the City of Barberton and Main Street Barberton have website pages designated to explaining the DORA rules and regulations. Main Street Barberton also created a 3-minute video, which is provided to the business establishments to educate the employees on DORA requirements and laws. Go ahead and, yep, right there, good. This is a document that was distributed and poster that was distributed to the downtown businesses with regards to the boundaries of Main Street Barberton DORA area, and then also the do's and don'ts of DORA, and then also lists the locations that DORA is allowed. In last year, June of 2024, I conducted a survey with the businesses that currently have the DORA, the 9 businesses. We had 8 responses. Go ahead and go on the next one, sorry. We had 8 responses from the 9 businesses asking the question, have you found DORA to be benefit to your business? 87% said yes, 12% said indifferent. We asked, do you believe DORA has made an impact on your sales for alcohol? 62% said yes, 12% said no, and 25% said they didn't know. We also asked the survey if DORA has impacted your business in a negative way. 100% said no, it did not. We also questioned, do you feel extending the DORA days to include Monday through Wednesday would benefit your business, which would then be a full week. 8 response said 75% said yes, 25% said maybe. Go ahead. Is there any reason you would not want DORA extended through 12 p.m. to 10 p.m.? We only had, we had 1 no, 2 said no, or 3 said no. Would you like to see Sunday also, 20%, and then 20% just said that not that many people, it might not make a difference, basically. We sent out a separate survey to the businesses downtown, so over 50 businesses received a survey. So these are non-alcoholic businesses, these are retail service-oriented businesses, so they also received a survey separately. And the question was, has DORA impacted your business in a negative way? We had 22 responses of the businesses that responded. 95.5% said no, DORA has not impacted their business in a negative way, and a percentage of them, 0.5% said maybe. So I asked about that question, if it's impacted your business in a negative way, give me an example of what that would be. One person said, "I don't think we've had any real issues or severe negative impact. The issues are that people are sitting outside at the picnic tables and taking it up for their space. So their business is not allowed to use the picnic tables because people are sitting there with beverages. But they've not had any customer complaints or lost anyone due to this. But it's something that we noticed on busy weekends when the weather's nice. Even though it has not affected my business directly, it gives us an additional way to draw people all around the downtown business area. So that was actually not a negative comment, that was a positive comment that it increases the business in the downtown area. The last person said, "I do not allow Dora in my bookshop because of looking at books and holding alcohol." She didn't want it to get spilled on her books, but she was just saying that she doesn't allow it in her business, which every business can choose to allow to have a Dora cup inside of it. So businesses have identified on their door before you walk in whether or not they would allow a cup to be inside, either showing green, red, or that would be the only choice, is green or red. Yes, you can go in, no, you cannot. Do you feel extending Dora days would impact your business? 68% said no, 18% said possibly, and 13% said yes. And then the question was asked, is there any reason you would not want Dora extended in the downtown? No reason at all, so this is just some of the feedback. Please do extend Dora as much as possible. Anything we can do to bring people downtown is a benefit to our local business. It should be every day, no reason. I think it would be partially alleviate the confusion of how Dora functions. No, go for it. I would think it is beneficial to other downtown businesses. This does not apply to us. They're Monday through Friday business. No aside from the obvious problems. Traveling on food in an area heavily traveled by vehicles. No, and then somebody put days of when the door is, and then some said a lot of businesses aren't open Monday and Tuesday, so I don't see a huge boost for those businesses on those days. I also looked up on the Department of Commerce to see the Dora venues that are in the state of Ohio. According to the Department of Commerce, there are 118 registered Dora cities. Of those, 63% do operate Monday through Saturday or Sunday, and most others had various days that did not state on the website, so they were not listed on there. The City of Barberton, in partnership with the Main Street Barberton, identified a need for additional garbage cans downtown as we're monitoring Dora to accommodate the accumulation of trash, the Dora cups, on the streets that we were seeing. And so as of August 30th, the city put out 30 new trash cans downtown and additionally put 5 additional trash cans downtown to account for the additional trash. So that was addressed with regards to trash. That's all I have specific to Dora.
Does anyone have any questions? I know, Emily, you had sent over a few. Did you get all your answers? And
yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think the Dora, I'm sorry. Mayor, do you have any questions?
But for some of you who were on council when this was established, you remember that the intention was to go and expand the days and the hours. We wanted to kind of test this. This was kind of new for us. We've reached out to many cities who were like size, some that were bigger, some that were kind of more college towns, and they all started kind of small and expanded. So that was the intention. This has been vetted through the safety director and the safety forces, and so the intention was to be back here at some point anyway, and I think that it's been a good result for the businesses, for our safety forces, and for the community at large. So if you recall, this was the intention when we first started this.
I have no objections. Oh, Mr. Harris?
Ms. Eisman, there's been no police calls or any problems, I guess, according to what the mayor is saying?
Their only incident that we have had where it's been an issue, and I think it's something we can address with parks, is when people that want to take, when they have a concert, they want to take their cups, they'll go from the end of line of door and they'll go into, if they want to watch, over at the gazebo. So I think that could be easily eliminated if we had some sort of trifold sign that because we have it marked on the sidewalk, but you're just assuming I'm walking down 5th Street and all of a sudden, or 6th Street just stops. If we had just like a trifold that said, Dora stops here, and we could put a trash can when we have events That's really been the only issue, people taking their cups into, to watch a concert. But within the Dora, no. And I did check with Lieutenant White on that.
Great,
And
thank
of
you.
course, as you know, it's really hard to also tell what it's, but nothing of concern.
Right. Thank you.
Ms. Eisman, are they not allowed to drink it by the gazebo because it's a park?
Correct.
City ordinance.
Okay.
They added the Hunky Club, is that?
Yeah, so that's one of the two new ones. So the Hungarian Club is now, they're within the Dora boundaries, so they have, yeah.
So is there gonna be a break in the Dora so the Hunky Club can go outside the Hunky Club and that's about it?
So Worcester Road is the cut line for the Dora, so that is, they are within the boundaries.
So they can walk from, say, the Hunky all the way to M&M?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep,
I just didn't know
Yeah.
with that big, okay,
yep, it's
I got you.
within the boundaries, correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry.
for the record, abstain.
Yes, Mr. Heidick abstains because of his employment at the Green Diamond. Any questions about that? Okay. I don't have any other legislation. Does anybody have any miscellaneous discussion? Okay. I'm going to use my last few minutes. I wanted to talk about the Insight presentation from last week. I'm going to give you guys a few numbers. We have been contracted with Insight since January of 2016. And as of last November, we've paid them over $385,000. So that's almost 10 years of representing economic development in Barberton. I'm asking the mayor, the planning director, the board of control, and council for us to not renew our contract with Insight this May. And I'm going to tell you why I feel this way. First, they were not able to provide any businesses that they've helped expand. I understand if there's a confidentiality and things are in the works, but there was not even a reflection of ones that they've done in the past. Not being able to even give an approximate number of vacant buildings for sale or leases or open land that businesses could come to. The exact words used were, "It's a moving target." I think this could actually be information that we can track. Not able to provide positive or negative feedback. Again, there was no specifics. Incorrect information provided, again, unable to list specifics when asked to give the names of the top 3 biggest businesses here in Barberton. They said that the top 10 have 1,400 employees. For everybody to know, Barberton's top 3 are Suma with 800 to 900, PPG with 400 to 500, and BWXT with 1,200. So the top 3 alone gives us over 2,400. Insight said the top 10 gave us 1,400. I have concern that council members are kept from attending BREs and the economic development meetings. If things are on the up and up, new businesses are being retained, I think businesses would like to see active council members. Insight should have had the forethought to secure grants and help prior to the Worcester Road West construction to help already struggling businesses. Letters were dropped off after the directional detour was put into place. Businesses should have been contacted prior to the construction beginning. Questions and concerns could have been answered at that point. ODOT gave the city a heads up in January of last year that the project would begin approximately mid-May. So that was plenty of time for conversations to be had that weren't. When asked what Insight was contracted for and hired for by the city to accomplish, they again were unable to provide any specifics. This makes determining if they are worth the investment challenging, as well as seeing any measurable accomplishments. I'm continually unable to determine who leads economic development in Barberton. With Insight's involvement and allegedly looking out for our city, why were they late getting us to the polymer table? That started over 2 years ago, and it's one of the biggest things brought to this area in the past 100 years. I'd still like some information, disclose the top 10 expanding businesses in details. What companies did they retain 200 jobs at? And why were these jobs going to be lost in the first place? What companies will the 200 jobs projected over 5 years be at? What are the jobs and what do they pay? I just gave you the top 3. Can they give you the remaining 7 and the employee count of businesses in Barberton? Provide list dates and outcomes of the 35 site visits. What are the specific leads for the Rite Aid building? The minutes, attendees, and actions that come from the economic development meetings that happen twice a month. Email the economic strategy, specifically including the plan, goals, measurable metrics, timeline to all of us. What specific assistance was looked into for businesses on Worcester Road West? What did we apply for? The last time they reached out to these businesses and the outcome of these visits. Specifics on the collaboration with Main Street. I attended a majority of the board meetings and almost every event of Main Street last year and never saw Insight at any of them. And I'd like to see the contract between the city and Insight. That was probably a lot. I could email that out, but does anybody have any questions or comments? Mrs. Thompson?
I just have a comment, and I know that you had touched on it, but I do know when they were here presenting, it also stuck out to me. I think you said 35, but I think it might have been 38, because that was something that stuck in my mind. Site visits in a year out of 52 weeks, and that was a little concerning to me as well. So thank you for taking the time to express your concerns with that.
Thank you. I had to go back and watch it a few times with my bowl of popcorn. Mayor?
Yeah, if you can please email that to me, we'll get you all that information. And as I mentioned last week, we have no problem taking counsel on VREs. We want to make sure that the business is comfortable with the council rep being there. Some businesses are more forthcoming in opening the doors than others. We want to make sure that they're comfortable in doing that though. So we told you we'd invite you. We want to check with the businesses first. We told you we'd give you examples of some of the things that you brought up. Again, either check with the business or change the name of the business so you can see how they were helped, number of employees, things like that. Again, it's really up to the business if they want to share that information.
And I guess even if they can't provide it for last year, there would have been 8 other years. Maybe they could provide it since the expansions or retentions would have already happened.
I haven't received any questions since last week nor the week before when council was provided the recap of the summary of what they had done. So if you can email that to me, we'll get you some answers.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
I appreciate all your work.
Thank you. Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I am so sorry. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. If your proposal not to renew Insight is taken under consideration, do you propose an economic development employee in the planning department?
I would love that. I know that we probably can't hire one for $50,000, but I think that that's definitely needed for our city.
Because according to the charter, we are supposed to, under 601B, powers and duties of the commission, the second paragraph, council shall appropriate sufficient funds each year to carry out the planning and zoning provisions of this charter. So if that's the route, then the budget would need to reflect that, is all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:34 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhart.
You're welcome.
Next up is City Utilities with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities, I would like to call this meeting to order today. On March 10th, we are in Calvary Chambers. The time is 6:35 p.m. We have one new request for legislation to call for tonight. A letter from Dennis Weaver, Utilities Director, City of Barberton, requesting legislation to permit the mayor to prepare and submit a funding application to the Ohio Public Works Commission, OPWC, for the Lloyd Street sanitary sewer collapse repair. 10 days suspension approved by President Justin Greer, emergency wording and one reading requested. I would like to invoke Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302, the 10-day rule, because we would like to vote on this tonight, and that's due to time restraints. Do I have a motion to invoke Rule 702?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Hager. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. This was not on the agenda tonight, so we'll have to Council Rule 304. Not called for in the committee of the whole meeting. So do I have a motion for Council Rule 304?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Beck. Have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sager. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So it's not on the agenda rule. Okay, Council Rule 401. This was not called for in the committee of the whole meeting. So we'll have to invoke Council Rule 401. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Hager. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We should be voting on this tonight. For our pending legislation, we have ordinance number 33-2025, titled Electricity Aggregation Program, amending ordinance number 154-2020, and ordinance amending ordinance number 154-2020, authorizing all the actions necessary to support the continuation of a governmental electric aggregation program with opt-out provisions pursuant to section 49280-20 Ohio Revised Code, directing the mayor of the city of Barberton to execute an electric supply agreement with Dynegy, formerly known as Energy Harbor, to reflect a new energy rate of 0.842 per kilowatt hour and declaring an emergency. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion on this?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes, sir.
So as of this morning, I contacted our energy consultants, and the rate would actually have to be amended to 0.0932.
Yeah.
.0932.
So that's up, that's an increase. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Chair. On that matter, since that number fluctuates, wouldn't it be beneficial just to amend it to say the lowest? When we go to vote on it, it's going to be different. Are they locking it in at that?
If you vote on it today, I can sign tomorrow, and it's going to be
Okay.
0.0932. I mean, it does fluctuate. We saw from a Friday to a Monday, the last time it dropped a little bit, but it's moving. It's a constant moving target. Our government affairs rep from First Energy said expect 10 to 12 cents by midsummer. So.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to amend ordinance number 33-2025 to update it. Is that the one? Yeah,
Yes.
to be updated, what is it, 0.9?
0.932.
0.0932.
0.0932.
All right, so I'll make a motion to amend to 0.932.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Beck. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Do we have any miscellaneous discussion, anything for utilities? Yes, Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Chair. I hate to be the stickler, but on the legislation to permit the mayor for the funding application, you suspended Rule 302, 304, 401, and it's not listed on the agenda. There was never a vote to advance it. There
Correct.
was only
Yep.
votes to suspend rules.
I was going to say, we needed a vote to call that out.
Okay.
It wasn't.
It wasn't on the sheet.
It wasn't you. Nobody else.
That's why I looked at him, because I was like, I don't remember.
Do I have a motion to call for this?
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Hager. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Motion passes. Now, do I have any more miscellaneous discussion? Gallery? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Ramey. Second?
I'll second.
We are adjourned at 6:42. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Last but not least, Finance Personnel, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. It is Monday, March 10th, 2025, 6:42 here in Council Chambers. All members of my committee are present, as well as all other council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We first up have the presentation of the finance report for the month of February 2025.
Thank you. Starting off with the health insurance fund for the February 2025. Our revenues were $423,000. Our expenditures were just under $440,000. Puts our net year-to-date at $96,259. Moving on to the health or income tax fund. Our estimate and actual were actually pretty close this past month. Our estimates were $1,134,000. Our actuals came in at $1,194,000. We did do a transfer from the income tax fund to the general fund in the amount of $3,831,250. That was in the temporary budget ordinance that City Council passed at the end of the year last year. So we transferred out that in the month of February. So until the budget passes, there will not be any more transfers from the income tax fund to the general fund. Moving on to the statement of cash receipts and disbursements. Usual funds that are in the negative. First off, city grant fund. That is the sludge to watering building. Next is the FEMA fund. That is the flood mitigation, which that is tying up. And then the dam grant. We're in the design phase of that. And then the next one in the negative is the CDBG fund. Of course, that's our HUD grant. Moving on to the next page, the next fund in the negative, and it's only due to the encumbrances outstanding, is the internal cost allocation fund. That's where a lot of our chargebacks go to. That big PO right there is for Ports Petroleum, so it's our fuel. For our fuel tanks. So as the months go by, we'll charge it back to the departments and it will come out of the negative slowly. Moving on to the next page, the last 3 months of activity, you'll notice the general fund increased by just over $3 million. Like I said, we did the big transfer this past month. The past few months, we really haven't had transfers. I mean, in December we did have $125,000. But no transfer last month, and then this month we went up to $3.8 million. So that's what increased there. Special revenue funds decreased slightly by about $1.4 million. Looking at the enterprise funds are up by about $300,000 from last month to this month, and then all other funds has decreased by about $38,000. Moving on to February 24th to February 25. The unencumbered cash balance in the general fund has increased from last year to this year. Couple things leading that. Net transfers, if you look at the transfers, that's up about 400,000. Encumbrances outstanding also decreased by about 330,000. Those two alone accounts for about 720,000 of that increase. Special revenue funds is down by about 1.6 million, almost 1.7 million. A lot of that just the ARPA funds getting used up from last year to this year. Enterprise funds is down. A lot of that driving factor is the encumbrances outstanding. If you take a look at those encumbrances outstanding, they went up about almost 1.7 million. So I mean that's accounting for 1.7 million of the $2 million decrease. And then all other funds, you'll see it decreased by 890,000. We had the 2 healthcare holidays last year, so that plays a part in our ending balances there. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
For pending legislation, we have ordinance 22-2025, the budget. The second reading will be this evening, and if it's okay, if we can review that during legislative. And go over it during legislative.
Sure.
Okay. Next up, we have resolution number 30-2025, title Support for State Issue 2, renewal of the State Capital Improvement Program, a resolution declaring it necessary to support State Issue 2, a renewal of the State Capital Improvement Program on the May 6, 2025 statewide ballot and declaring an emergency. Are there any remarks? Okay, we have ordinance number 31-2025, presented by Mr. Harris and myself, title Enter into Contract Public Consulting Group, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a 3-year contract with Public Consulting Group to pay 10% of approximately $136,148 to be collected annually and declaring an emergency. Are there any remarks? Lastly, ordinance number 34-2025, title Enter into Contract Butcher and Sons. This is to authorize the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Butcher and Sons for the 2025 residential demolition program and declaring an emergency. Are there any remarks? Okay, we have no appointments this evening. We'll go ahead and open it up for miscellaneous discussion. Anything from the gallery? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second?
A second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:48.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. That concludes our individual committee meetings. Individual committee meetings this evening. We're going to take a 5-minute break and come back and begin our regular legislative meeting.
I don't know what you meant by that. Saying that you can make the budget to higher I think that makes the most sense. Because my point in this wasn't the questions, it's to say that whenever you've sold something for 10 years, you know about it. I know.
D3 is probably close to 225.
So my normal heart rate,
It is, I think.
So like a skid loader, we do a lot of grading in a skid loader. We charge $150 an hour. That's $75 for the man and then $75 for the machine. Locally, we charge from the time we start loading that machine up at the shop, kind of like a delivery charge. If it's like say I'm going to Cleveland, there might be a flat rate of $400 just to show up.
Just to show up.
Yeah, because what happens a lot of time when we protect ourselves is we'll spend 3 hours or whatever to get there, and they're not ready.
They're not ready for it.
So we make them pay for it. But so if it's around your house, you don't want anything heavy anyway, you might want to look at a skid loader. But we charge $150. And that's man, machine, fuel.
Two lots, one beside and one back of me. Split lot, or our property. This got all front door trees.
We'll
I'm gonna cut them down, all the crooked ones.
Yeah, it was Friday.
Leave the good ones. And it's a lot of brush on the ground, I wanna cut it, but I need somebody to put it all together.
Oh, I see what you're
Trying to
saying.
drag it.
You're gonna pull the stumps out? What are you gonna do?
Well, I wasn't thinking about, I was gonna cut it as low as I could for now, and then think about the stumps later.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that, so, we don't typically have a minimum, but some people do. They may say 6-hour minimum.
I bet you a good hour. And you'd have more probably.
That's what kind of stinks about some of that. Yeah, you drag it out, unload, you get
feel air on me, but it's not as powerful as normal.
Might have to open some windows up.
Yeah, maybe we should open some windows.
Window
Are you guys
opening?
hot?
I turned off that,
We're hot.
I did not touch it.
Wait a minute.
If everybody's all hot,
It's not winter time, so go ahead.
Be careful because Shorter doesn't want the cool air.
Oh, right, here. You need it on cool.
It's the white one, I think, that
No.
pulls it.
No, it's because
I don't want the sun getting you.
Yeah, the sun is gone now.
if we could change,
If the sun was shining, it would blind everybody
turn the whole
from
mess off.
Bebe.
Monty, did you see my request? For the end.
Oh, yeah, in writing? Yeah.
what we're gonna have to figure
I
out
saw the
something that's hot outside.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm ready.
That means you don't check around.
I won't.
All right.
I told Justin.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and begin. Council, ensure your microphones are turned on. Today's Monday, March 10th, 2025. This is regular legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 6:59 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by invocation by Mr. Griffin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's bow our heads, please. Heavenly Father, I thank you for having this privilege of serving our city, and I pray, Father, that we discuss our agenda and craft policies for our city. We will always put the people's interests above our own. Please bless our first responders and the men and women in our armed forces. We ask this in your blessed name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Clerk, please call the roll.
President Burke.
Present?
Mr. Hyden.
Here.
Mrs. Thompson.
Here.
Mrs. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Easterling.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mrs. Beck.
Here.
Ms. Gerhart.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here. Thank you. Approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, February 24th, 2025, as presented. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting from Monday, February 24th, 2025.
Thank you. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion on approval.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and second by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, February 24th, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are adopted. Approval of the minutes of the special legislative meeting held on Monday, February 26th, 2025, as presented. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the approval of the minutes of the special legislative meeting from Monday, February 26th, 2025.
Thank you. And Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion on approval.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and second by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the special legislative meeting held on Monday, February 26, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? Mrs. Thompson?
That's a Wednesday, actually.
I just got that myself.
Yeah, it's Wednesday,
All
the
right, thank
26th.
you. All right. We'll continue with that motion.
I just noticed that, just.
Thank you.
Yep, for the record.
All right. With that updated, are there any other remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The minutes are adopted. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Petitions and claims?
There are none.
Matters requested?
They've all been dispersed.
Citizens addressing council?
I didn't see any.
Okay. All right, there are none. First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Resolution number 30-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Support for State Issue 2 Renewal of the State Capital Improvement Program. A resolution declaring it necessary to support State Issue 2, a renewal of the State Capital Improvement Program on the May 6, 2025 statewide ballot and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of Resolution Number 30-2025.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt resolution number 30-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 31-2025, presented by Mr. Harris and Mrs. Thompson. Title, enter into contract, public consulting group. An ordinance authorizing the mayor as designee to enter into a 3-year contract with public consulting group to pay 10% of approximately $136,148 to be collected annually and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Harris's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Harris and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 31-2025.
Thank you. And Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Harris's motion on adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Harris and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to adopt ordinance number 31-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 33-2025, presented by Mr. Griffin. Title, Electricity Aggregation Program, amending ordinance 154-2020. An ordinance amending ordinance 154-2020, authorizing all actions necessary to support the continuation of a governmental electric aggregation program with opt-out provisions pursuant to section 4928.20 of the Ohio Revised Code, directing the mayor of the city of Barberton to execute an electric supply agreement with Dynenergy, formerly known as Energy Harbor, to reflect a new energy rate of .0842 kilowatt hours and declaring an emergency. Tonight, this was amended on the floor and voted unanimously in committee to amend the rate. So let me read the new ordinance as you will be voting on it. It's ordinance 33-2025, title, Electricity Aggregation Program, amending ordinance 154-2020. An ordinance amending ordinance number 154-2020, authorizing all actions necessary to support the continuation of a governmental electric aggregation program with opt-out provisions pursuant to section 4928.20 of the Ohio Revised Code, directing the mayor of the city of Barberton to execute an electric supply agreement with Dynenergy, formerly known as Energy Harbor, to reflect a new energy rate of .0932 kilowatt hours per kilowatt hour and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Griffin's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Griffin and seconded by Mrs. Hager to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Easterling.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 33-2025 as amended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Griffin's motion on adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Griffin and seconded by Mrs. Hager to adopt ordinance number 33-2025 as amended. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Easterling.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 34-2025, presented by Mr. Heidick and Mrs. Thompson. Title, enter into contract Butcher and Sons. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with Butcher and Sons for the 2025 residential demolition program and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Easterling.
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt ordinance 34-2025.
Thank you. And Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion on adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to adopt ordinance number 34-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Easterling.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Before I read the following resolution, this piece of legislation was voted on in the City Council Utilities Committee meeting this evening. The committee invoked Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rules 302, 304, and 401. Resolution number 35-2025, presented by Mr. Griffin. Title, OPWC funding application, Lloyd Street sanitary sewer collapse. A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Barberton to prepare and submit a funding application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for the Lloyd Street sanitary sewer collapse and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Griffin's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Griffin and seconded by Mrs. Hager to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Easterling.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance.
I'm sorry, what's that? For,
Ordinance number
35.
35,
okay.
35-2025.
That's a resolution, correct?
Resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Griffin's motion for adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Griffin and seconded by Mrs. Hager to adopt resolution number 35-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
This ends the first readings.
Second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 22-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, 2025 Operating and Capital Budget. An ordinance adopting a budget for the various funds of the City of Barberton for a period beginning January 1st, 2025, and providing for the administration thereof and declaring an emergency. This is the second reading. The first reading was on February 24th, 2025, and the third and final reading will be on March 24th, 2025. This ends the second readings.
Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
There are none.
Appointments.
There are none.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have a liquor license. It's a new application for license. It's D5 is the type of license. And I will turn that over to Mr. Heidick if anybody needs it explained, because that's what I had to do. It is, the application is made by, and the liquor license will go to Kraken, K-R-A-K-E-N Entertainment LLC, doing business as Timber Beast. And the address is 579 West Tuscarora Street, Barberton, Ohio, 44203. I received no objections.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick, could you explain what a D5 is again?
A D5 license allows beer, wine, and hard liquor Monday through Saturday till 2:30 in the morning, and I do believe beer only on Sundays.
All right. The way we handle liquor license now, this is a revision to what we enacted before. So, are there any objections from any of the council members? All right, seeing no objections, there's no objections from the council.
Everybody voted aye.
Yeah, well, if there's an objection from any council member, there has to be a piece of resolution put forward by that member and voted on for on the floor. So that's how it has to work. Other miscellaneous and unfinished business, we do have some budget talks that we moved to this area. And I'll turn the floor over to the mayor for that.
All right, thank you very much. We've got 4 budgets to present this evening. Human Resources, Safety, Civil Service, and Stormwater. Possibly not in that order. But I will turn it over to our HR Safety Director, Ms. Eisman.
Okay, I have page numbers, and you don't, correct?
Yes, but I've numbered mine, so you can say it.
I'm going to do civil service first. I have page 29.
Sorry, that's the service director.
There you go.
There's only 2 vested judges.
All right, I'll be presenting, I do have 3 budgets, so I do have civil service, I have safety, and I have human resources. With civil service, it's a small budget. A majority of it does come out of professional services, and it did come under budget last year. What I get that number from is I'm having to figure out how many exams I'm going to have to put on for the year. Entrance exams, promotional exams, and we did not do as many exams as I had budgeted for, so that's why I came in under. I am going to have more promotional exams this year. That's why I do have a higher budget. Any questions about that budget?
That's good news.
Yes, Mrs. Gerhart.
What is equipment and furnishings? The 2,000?
I believe I only spent 487 out of that, of the 2,000.
Yeah.
But I put 2,000 in, and I did speak to Mr. Flaker about any of I have the 3 accounts, that anything I had in capital, I'm fine doing away with that. I did budget for anything that laptops are getting old, computers, but I did realize that doesn't have to come out of capital. So if I need anything like that, I'll just get that from supplies. I believe I can do office supplies.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that budget? Okay. I have safety on page 32, so that would just be 3 pages later. Any questions I could answer about that? IT comes out of their Swisscom, yes.
Can you explain the Summit Emergency Management stuff to everybody?
I would love to explain it. It is a fee that the county charges us.
For the radios?
No.
What fee is it?
Jeremy? Yeah.
When we had that meeting, did they?
We'll
I couldn't hear
have to
you.
get the actual invoice to see what it
Did they
is, and
cover
I'll.
what it-
Can you
I would-
email that
yes,
to us then?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Gerhart?
For training and travel, it went over budget last year.
It did. I transferred, I had money in education in that fund, and it was transferred to that. It was to do training. We had a manager development program, and I contributed out of the safety budget for the street department.
Thank you.
Is
Yes.
the capital outlay the same?
Correct.
You're giving that back?
Yes.
Giving it back.
I'm giving it back, yeah. Any other questions? No, okay. And then human resources is on page 33, the next page. Again, a lot of the largest one there, professional services. Mostly those funds are spent on any labor for our labor attorney, any advertising that we use with different newspapers, whether it's online, in print. Employee exams covers everything we do for a background for all of our employees, whether it's medical exams, their backgrounds, any psych, medical. Any questions about that budget? Yes, sir.
Capital outlay, the $3,000,
Mm-hmm.
are you gonna keep that, or?
I said I could take that away. I would want to have maybe increase the office supply by at least 1,000 or 2 to be able to cover. I cover 3 departments, so I would like to have some money just in case something has to be replaced, so I don't have to come and get something appropriated. So if that's okay, if I do take that out, I would like to have at least 1,000 or 2,000 put in office supplies to cover one of the 3 departments.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stormwater, Caroline Crawford's here, towards the end of your, I don't have the page number, I apologize. Towards the end, stormwater management under enterprise funds. That's the general line fund, do you have a page number?
I have it as 102, but I'm always a little bit off.
102-ish?
I mean,
102 sounds good.
There we go.
I have
She
100,
meant in
but I
life.
skipped a couple pages at the beginning.
I mean, it's not wrong.
Especially now that we can door our way to our cars at night after council.
Okay, so we'll start with our revenue. We anticipate about $785,000 from our stormwater utility fee. And we also anticipate getting the grant that covers our LEAF program this year, and that's $26,000. Going down, we have salaries and overhead that covers 5 employees. Operation and maintenance, that covers essentially our everyday uses we do, keeps us in compliance with our NPDES permit and operation and maintenance of our storm sewer. Not a lot of significant changes there. When we go into capital, we have $231,000 and $75,000 anticipated in engineering and design for areas in north, east, and south. And as we gather a little more information, we'll be able to include some areas on the west side on that. Do you have any questions? Yes.
What is your professional services used for?
We use that to keep in compliance with the plan review, and then if we need general consulting. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, can we clarify what account number that is?
52330.
Okay, sorry, that name change, so actually that one, that covers our MOU with Summit Soil and Water, and they take care of our minimum control measures 1, 2, 4, and 5. It also covers MOU with our health department, education, our annual NPDES permit with the EPA, and then our weather station we have here at the city building.
Thank you.
Yes.
You have 145,000 here for operating supplies.
Yes.
52,612. Can you tell me what?
That goes towards our actual storm sewer system, so catch basin repairs, inlet repairs, pipes, the actual field supplies for that.
Okay.
Thanks. I see the emergency repairs went up 76,000.
Mhm. That's just based off, every year there's an emergency.
Yeah.
And that's just based off general costs going up from previous emergencies we've had.
Wow. Okay, yeah, because I see last year was 47,468, and we upped it to 124.
Yeah, we used that and more last year.
Okay. Just curious.
Very simple question.
Uh-huh.
Because I see this on every budget, and I'm just trying to wrap my head. How many copiers do you have?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
For you.
In my area,
For
we
you.
have one.
Okay.
There's 13 machines
13 machines throughout the,
throughout the city, yep.
I have a total for the copiers if you'd like it,
You
because
got
I
one for the
added that up
phones, too?
today.
you got one for the phones too?
I do. I was going to be bringing that up this evening.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
For next week, I'll send out to council the individual funds that'll be discussed next week, but mostly court funds. And I want to put those all in one night because a lot of them are interrelated and there's specific rules, state rules, or ORC rules on how that money is collected, spent, all that good stuff. There's a number of funds, I can't recall how many exactly. Clerk of Court should be here as well. And that pretty much wraps it up before the third and final reading. Again, if there's any questions on the budget, what's been presented so far or in the near future for next week, please let us know. Yep.
Will all the presentations be done next week? So we have like a week to wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't present every single.
Are you going to do Parks and Rec next week with the
Yeah, I've got to
courts?
get with Mr. Patterson. That should
Because
be
I
next
feel
week
like
as well.
that's the main one I'm thinking we haven't talked about.
Yep.
Right?
I think so too.
Okay. And then to Mr. Easterling's question, our phone bill is $133,925. Should we shop for a different phone provider? That seems steep.
Well, we have a lot of phones in the city, a lot of calls coming in and out. I'm not sure of the usage in other departments like the courts or police.
Police was,
Oh, you have it broken down?
I wrote them all down because I didn't know how else to add them up. Police was 50,000. Fire was only 11,000. Another big one was 10,000 for the information systems. 10 grand in solid waste. Those are your big ones. Oh, another 10 grand in sewer. It just seemed, an 11 grand in water. Just seems high for phones.
Are these landlines and
I have no idea.
mobiles? What?
These mobile landlines?
I'd have to do some deep dive into like a department's budget line item, but I'm thinking, yes, the cell phones and landlines are in the telephone line items. So it's just not like our Spectrum bill is 111,000 or whatever you said that number is. I'm sure Verizon, all the cell phones and everything's included in that.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm looking that up right now.
it just kept jumping out on every page, phone, and this seemed high. That's why I sat there and added it up.
Did you have a question?
I was going to mention, with some of the changes that are not in the budget now, but that were going to be made, like, for example, today there was money allocated for certain things that they didn't want in there. How are we going to handle that? Because these little changes, it was passed out of committee, as is at right now. Technically, we need to amend the budget if we're going to change anything. How do we want to handle that?
So those changes would come to council, be amended on the floor.
Or who's tracking that stuff? Like individual council members?
I have my changes that I asked for.
Okay.
Just talking to some of the departmental heads.
Okay.
Like Ms. Carr from planning, we discussed the 30,000 from a couple weeks ago and what she could live with and what we could do with the remaining money.
Okay.
Because the demo fund is low. It's actually short.
So if we get a list, is it best to send that list to you, Mayor?
Myself and the finance director.
And then, so we can
Make sure those are-
reconcile everything, make sure it's all good, and then get a final copy before we vote on it? Or digital copy, please, not, it can be a digital copy.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to figure that out, because there were some changes, so.
All right.
Mr. Flaker?
Add one thing. Yeah, as you guys alluded to, please get me those changes that you'd like to see, or that you're going to want to amend in the budget ordinance as soon as possible, because any changes I make will affect minimum fund balances for the 4 funds that maintain minimum fund balance. So I have to make sure that with these changes, we're not, I think most of the changes are pulling money out, so it shouldn't affect minimum fund balance, but I need to make sure it doesn't affect minimum fund balance, so we're in compliance from that standpoint as well. So I'll need to know those changes so I can plug that into the formulas to make sure we're within compliance for that as well. So just wanted to make note of that.
Is that even if we're, like, for instance, on planning's budget, we're not taking the money actually out of their budget?
Correct. It won't change the minimum fund balance there. So, like I said, I think a lot of the changes is taking back money. I know, like, HR Director Eisman was saying, Safety Director, HR Director, as she was saying, holds both titles, she said the capitals can come back. Well, that's gonna help our minimum fund balance. But if there's any changes of us adding anything to the budget, that could affect minimum fund balance, which if I don't take those into consideration and we go too much, we could be out of compliance from that standpoint, and then we're violating our own ordinance at that point in time, our own fiscal policies. So yes, if you can, get those to me by next week sometime, end of next week, so I can get all the changes plugged in, because I supply Lori with the budget ordinance, so I will supply her with the updated numbers on the budget ordinance as well, as long as I have a little bit of a heads up.
Okay.
So.
We'll
Thank you,
discuss
Director.
it afterwards.
Thank you, Mayor. That wraps up miscellaneous. Is there anything from the body? Anything from department heads? I do not have anything. Next week is St. Patty's Day, short notice. I was going to try to finagle some stuff and move it to our meeting to Tuesday, but didn't think about it. So we do have a meeting.
It's a week away, it's not short notice. You can change your mind.
We'll have it on Monday as normal, I think.
Yeah,
I think everybody can live with that.
I'm not changing anything.
I don't want to work Monday.
But I looked at it, I was like, we'll just roll with it. So our normal meeting will be on the 17th. With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Heidick? Oh, I am so sorry, Mayor. You were up there talking, and I just completely skipped over it.
Well, with that, I'll only be about 45 minutes, so. I just want to thank Paula Callio again for her work in the community and all the positive things she's been a part of. You know, as I tried to allude to earlier, and as we know, it's not like she was involved in one organization, right, which would be good enough. She was involved in many organizations throughout the community, and the thing with her is you just had to ask her once, right, and then she would go, right, and it was more difficult to stop her than it was to get her started. So as you can see, she's very, very exciting, and very excited to move forward and get things done. Change for Change is Friday, March 21st, 4:30 to 7 at Block 7, benefiting Welcome to Recovery Project. Again, this is a nonprofit focusing on women in recovery. As we discuss the budget and other things, there's obviously a lot of projects and programs ready to move forward. We anticipate the foundation, Barberton Community Foundation, to vote at the March 20th meeting next week on the City Justice Center grant request. That could change. We're kind of working through some things now. Obviously, you heard tonight some appropriations for College Park upgrades, which is moving forward. And I mentioned the other week some additional legislation that will be coming to City Council regarding Trushin Farm, and kind of go over this briefly, but again, requests will be coming with more information. But there'll be an amendment to the development agreement. So per the language in the previously adopted development agreement, the developer could opt to monetize the TIF and the CRA payments through the use of a minimum service payment and special assessments to pay a portion of the cost of the public improvements. There's no financial obligation on the city side, but it has to come through city council and be approved, which was kind of approved the first time, but it will be an amendment to the development agreement, kind of staying the same. There'll be a declaration of covenants. This is recorded with the county and will place an obligation on the property for the owners to pay the minimum service payments that'll be used to repay the bonds for the project. And then lastly is a cooperative agreement. This is an agreement between the city, the Development Finance Authority, and the developer, where the DFA agrees to issue the bonds, developer agrees to pay the bonds, but by law it's got to come through city council as well. So we'll go through all that and explain it and answer questions, but I wanted to remind everyone that that is coming here over the next few weeks. So I once again encourage council to reach out with questions, whether it's on economic development, contractors, the budget, or other items. I do realize that I can stand here each week and say that our doors are open as department heads, and they are. But I'm reaching out to council and have had several meetings with council members individually to talk about any questions that you guys may have or projects that are coming up. So I'm going to continue that moving forward. I understand that questions come up on Monday evenings, but the sooner we receive the questions, the sooner we can get back to you with answers. So if it's, hey, here's some questions, don't need to get back to me until Monday night, do in a public setting, that's totally fine too. If you have questions, we get back to you and you want to say what your questions are and the answers were here in a public setting, that's awesome as well. We're here to communicate, it's a two-way street, and to share information. But, you know, we also, one of the questions I have for council members when I meet with you is, how much information do we bring to council? Because I can't anticipate the questions you may have that evening. Again, I realize that questions may just pop up, but we don't bring all this information because we can't anticipate what questions you may have. And we also don't want to give you just a little bit, which leads to more questions and maybe the thought of, well, you're not giving us everything. But we don't want to just throw everything at you where you may say, well, let's just cut through all the BS and give us the facts. So I want to work with you and get you the appropriate amount of information that you need. And obviously, if you want more, it's there. If you want less, we need to know that as well. But there's some exciting projects on the horizon. There's other things that may not seem as exciting. It may be small scale, but we want to make sure that we're sharing that information and we're answering questions so everyone is fully educated on how these things work. It's not normal for the average day person to know how city operates. And I know there's some newer council members who may not know that as well. That's what we do, though. So we have trained professionals, we have certified professionals, licensed. So we want to make sure that we're communicating in an effective and efficient manner to answer all the questions that council has. So I'll say it again, doors are always open, but I will continue reaching out to city council members. I apologize. Entire household got sick last week, so I didn't get back to you.
That's all right.
But I will get back to you.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have. Yes.
The foundation meeting on the 20th, is that, do you know offhand, is that 5:30, 6 o'clock?
I believe that's.
It's usually 5.
I believe it's 5:30.
Oh, it's 5:30?
I think it's 5:30.
Let me see if as long as I don't lose internet access here. I have 5 o'clock.
5?
5 o'clock.
Maybe what I just said.
Show up late.
I have 5 too.
Because it's
You had-
impossible
I
to
had
get
5
to when
too.
you work.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Anything else? Yes.
On College Street Park, do we have a drawing of any, like a schematic or a drawing, final drawing, you know,
So-
how it's gonna look, you know?
For College Park?
Yes.
So I will get you one. We had one last week. We were on site,
Uh-huh.
and we said, hey, let's, based on the picture, let's move this. So it's
Okay.
not going to be accurate. I want to get you something accurate. But
Okay.
placement of the restroom, the pavilion, walking path, and that's why we met on site. So instead of looking at a map, we can actually walk around. But if you've not driven by, I encourage you to. The fence is gone, some trees are gone. They're cleaning up some of the debris that had been resting in bushes and up against the fence on the west and southern part of the park for many years. And so new fence is coming, and so moving right along. So, but I'll get you that. Yes?
Do we have any updates on the Cox building?
Still working with them on getting an agreement put together. I know with the previous agreement that was approved, they are allowed to do some work. I don't know if I don't believe they've started yet on anything, but I know they've been gearing up and we've been going back and forth on an agreement before it comes to city council.
Okay.
So, yes.
I know I asked Mr. Weaver this a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago, about the 5% increase in the water and sewer bill. Is the city going to let everybody know that before they get the bill? Or are they going to wait till the bill shows up and?
Yeah, no, typically we send something out, not via mail. And I'm not sure if it's on the month prior to the increase.
I believe that's the way he's always done it in the past.
And I believe we put something on social media, but I'll have to confirm that.
Yeah, because I haven't seen anything. But I know the last year when it went up 5%, it was on the bill prior to it being due. So it showed up in the, for example, you get the April bill and all of a sudden it said, hey, you know, in June it goes up. But I haven't seen that on our water bills. So
Okay.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
kind of let everybody know that beforehand. You
if
know,
that's what
because
utilities did last year, they'll do the same this year.
because I think Mr. Weaver said that it would be due on the April bill, which would be,
You're right.
you'll get your you'll get your bill for April here in the next few days, I would imagine. They're pretty quick about it. And then everybody's gonna be looking at going, there's my 5% increase. Didn't know about that.
Then we'll talk about all the water line replacement projects that we got going on. But yeah, residents need to know when that's going up. So, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Addy?
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second that motion to adjourn.
Thank you. It's moved by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Didn't think so. This meeting is adjourned at 7:45.